College, which is the system we use to elect the President and Vice President of the United States. Behind me is the most recent allocation of numbers of the Electoral College based off the 2010 census. We do a census every 10 years conducted by the federal government to see population changes in the various states and what areas are growing and what areas are declining. So these numbers change every 10 years based off of population growth patterns. Behind me is the official results of the 2012 presidential election. Blue states were won by president at the time, an incumbent, Barack Obama, Democrat, and the red states were won by Governor Mitt Romney, a Republican. As you see with the size of the states, they vary in importance. The states with the larger size are the states with the more electoral votes. The smaller the state is, the kind of least significant it is when it comes to presidential elections. You might notice there were a lot of red states. Unfortunately, the states that Romney won were not electorally vote heavy-wise. They did not have enough population in size to give higher electoral vote counts. Obama won some of the most populated states of this country, therefore higher electoral votes. Again, the Electoral College is used to elect the President and Vice President of the United States. The Electoral College is the group of people who are selected from each state to cast ballots for the party who won the popular vote of the state. Again, these groups of people, they vote after the popular vote has been calculated in an election. Again, here is the Electoral College based off of numbers. Again, your big four states. The most populated is California, second is Texas, and then we have New York and California. This is actually out of date. This is based off of the 2000 numbers because New York no longer has more popular votes than Florida. Florida and New York are now tied for third place. So, how do we determine how a state goes, whether it goes red or goes blue? Well, first thing, a slate of electors for each state is determined by the popular vote. So, for example, what this means, let's use Virginia, our own home and commonwealth. Virginia in 2012. And these are not official numbers, but I do know who won the state. Obama, let's say, won 349 votes, sure. And Romney won 1,823,417. Okay, so you get the idea, and you would subtract the difference to see the difference between Obama's lead versus Romney. So, since Obama won the popular vote, and that is all the votes cast in Virginia, he won the majority, Obama then would get the 13 points for the state of Virginia. Meaning they would be 13 Democratic electors who 99.9% of the time are going to vote for Obama. They are going to vote. Yes, there are scenarios, and everyone always asks, well, what if someone doesn't want it? What if someone goes against their party? Sure, it has happened. But more than likely, again, vast majority of times, this person who wins the popular vote, those people they select to be the 13 electors are die-hard Democrats or Republicans based off of who wins the state. So then those electors, and again, since Obama won Virginia, they are 13 electors, they go cast their votes for president and vice president. So that is why news channels can call on election night who wins the state. Because again, in a very rare circumstance, those 13 people are most likely again going to vote for the party who won them, Obama for Virginia. Okay? They are not likely to cast their votes and cross over against the will of the majority of the state. We call this a winner-take-all system. So it doesn't matter. You could win a state in 2000, for example. Bush, who was the Republican, won Florida, that entire state of millions of people, by roughly around 500 votes. His opponent, Gore, who was a Democrat, even though he lost the state only by 500 votes, did not get any of the electoral votes. Therefore, Bush won all 27 points. That is what we call a winner-take-all system. And that is why a state like Florida, a large state with electoral votes, matters. You're going to target Florida because, as you see, it has been very close in a state like Florida. Obama won it in 2012 and 2008, but it wasn't a large spread. It was very close. So a state like Florida has major significance. It's going to be targeted because it's a larger, very middle-of-the-road state. Okay? For example, as you see here, these states over here, I believe there's 10 of them. I'm not going to count. These 10 states outweigh in votes these 40 states. So these are the 10 most populated states in the country. They have way more electoral votes than the other 40 states of our country. That is because, again, winner-take-all system, you want to target the big states before you go to the other states. Now, in a very tight election, you are going to want to target more smaller states. Because if it's going to come down to, and again, in order to win the presidency, you need 270 electoral votes. In a situation like that, a state like New Hampshire, which has 4 total electoral votes, could make a difference. Okay? A state like Iowa with 6 could make a difference. So again, in a very close election, small states do play important roles in that total amount to get 270 to win the Electoral College and therefore the presidency. Now, swing states go along the lines with states that are targeted. In the 2012 election, these states up here had more ads purchased than the other states. Why is that? Because the states up here, including our own Virginia with 13 votes, were determined to be the states most likely to switch from voting Democrat or Republican. These are the states that Romney and Obama targeted heavily because it was a very close race in some of these states. Others ended up being blowouts. Romney won Arizona and Missouri quite handily. Obama won Pennsylvania and Michigan quite handily. But this is a general idea. These are the most competitive states based off of voting trends and patterns in a presidential election. So how do we determine the amount of votes each state gets? Very simple. It is based off of the state's congressional representation. That means the total number of members in the U.S. House, and every state gets 2 senators. So Virginia has 13 votes. Easy way of figuring that out. 2 senators, every state gets 2. And then your representatives are based off of a state. We've talked about this. How do we determine how many reps each state gets? It's based off of population. Okay? 2 senators plus the state's population, which is doled out in representatives, lead to the total number of electoral votes for a state. Again, quick formula. Your congressional reps, every state gets 2 senators, so 2 plus the number of reps, every state gets at least 1 rep, like Alaska, Wyoming, Delaware. So those states only have 3 total votes. But states like California with 53 plus 2 equals 55 electoral votes. Again, this is based off population. This whole system of requiring this 270 threshold to win the White House favors the parties with the most money. They can spend it and run with super PACs, and that is why the two-party system still dominates today. It is very hard for an independent candidate, even if they are a self-financing billionaire, to compete with the two-party system because they are established in all 50 states. So what's important to remember about today? The Electoral College votes for President and Vice President of the United States. It is not the popular vote. The popular vote determines which party wins the electors in your state. Okay? And so a quick review led by the kitty cats. How much do you remember? How many electoral votes does Virginia have? 2 senators plus 11 representatives equals 13. Meow. What state has the largest number of electoral votes? So we're looking for the state with the largest population in this country. The correct answer is California. The number of electoral votes is based off of, again, not just the population of a state, because you have to have the 2 senators. Therefore, it is a state's congressional representation. And this whole thing favors a two-party system. I hope you understood the Electoral College. If you didn't, there's a cool thing if you want to go. The website is 270towin.com, and you can do your own calculations. Now, a real quick thing, like I said, there are only certain states that are competitive, okay? A lot of states we have a good idea, unless in a landslide year, who's going to win. For example, the West Coast has gone Democrat for many years, okay? Those 3 states, along with most of New England, Vermont, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, those states are primarily, and get a little bit of Wisconsin, who's gone blue since '88. Minnesota has gone blue since 1976, I think. Michigan's primarily a blue state. Illinois goes blue. And these are states pretty much that the Democrats can bank on winning, usually in an election. So if this is starting out looking at the map of Hillary Clinton, if she is the presumed Democratic nominee against whoever the Republicans choose, it could be Rand Paul, it could be Chris Christie, it could be a bunch. Starting out in that election, Hillary Clinton has a 212 pretty much stronghold of votes. Now, whoever the Republican is going to start off with strongholds probably in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Arizona, Alaska. I forgot to make Hawaii blue. It's a very blue state. The Deep South has gone Republican since the Reagan Revolution. West Virginia is becoming a Republican state. Indiana is a reliably Republican state. D.C. has always been Democratic. You win 90% there. So the Republicans, if we're looking at this vote threshold, are looking at about 190 electoral votes. So they're at a disadvantage because the Democrats have a lot more of larger concentration of voters. And that again leads to states that are what we call swing states. So is this an accurate, or is this automatically going to be how 2016 starts out? No, things change. For example, in 2008, Indiana went Democrat for the first time since 1964. That's usually an anomaly. That doesn't happen very often. Okay? So here we go. The states that are probably, Delaware is a blue state. Sorry, I forgot a little Delaware. The states that are probably going to determine, again, who wins the presidency in 2016 are the states that are not colored. Okay? And the cool thing about this map, you can play around with it. So again, what could a Republican do to win back the White House? What's the least amount of states he or she could win? Well, they have to win Florida. If they don't win Florida, they're in an uphill battle because that would be close. That puts them almost in line with a Democratic candidate. They would have to win probably North Carolina like Romney did. We're at 235, still not the 270 threshold. They're going to need to win either Ohio, which gives them 253, and then they're still going to have to pick off a couple more. Nevada could be a good one. We're at 258. And then again, it's a matter of picking. Could they pull off New Hampshire? They could. George W. Bush won it once. We're at 263. 7 more electoral votes to win. So looking at the map, it's kind of favoring Democrats because they don't have to win as many. So let's say they get Iowa, 269. I don't know, we could play around with the scenario. Could we ever make it not 270? Let's see, that puts Dems there, 236, 249. Without trying, I just made a very rare scenario, just ironically, 269 Electoral College tie. In this situation, and in the Constitution, what happens here if no one gets to 270 electoral votes? And I just gave you a way it can happen. The states would have to look like this. It would go to the House of Representatives, and the state delegations would each cast a vote for President of the United States. So, in many ways, that would favor probably the Republican candidate, since Republicans have the majority in the House of Representatives. They might not after 2014 or 2016, but that would favor a Republican. The Senate would cast, each of them 100 votes total, would cast their ballot for vice president. Could it be a Republican president and a Democratic vice president? Yes. How likely is this to occur? Highly unlikely. There have been, I believe, 3 cases when someone did not obtain the amount, it wasn't always 270, but the necessary amount to win the presidential election. 1824, Jackson and John Quincy Adams, they call that the corrupt bargain. That election would be an example there. 1876, Tilden versus Hayes, corrupt election there. So there you go. Again, the website is 270 to win. You can play around and make your own little scenarios. If you go down, it tells you, for example, I picked Missouri. It gives you voting pattern of the states and who won that state those years. Missouri has gone Republican since 2000. So if the pattern holds, probably would go 2000 that way again. Let's do Virginia. Virginia, until recently, if you look at there, Virginia was a solid Republican state until Obama carried it both times for blue. It's interesting to see how this election will go in 2016. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, the website, if you want to play around, 270towin.com. Oh look, there's even a countdown to the next presidential election. 1,104 days, 13 hours. Wow, can't wait.